Welcome to Crosstalk and good evening to you. I hope you're having a good evening wherever you are. Today we talk about something that is really eating our society, and that thing is called suicide. Until it happens to you, it seems very distant. It seems very far. And we welcome you to Crosstalk. Here in Crosstalk, we put conversations, lay them bare, and we put the cross in the middle of it and bring Jesus to moderate. We have very able guests here today, and we have Gasheke Gashehe. That's right. Yeah. Gasheke Gashehe works with the Mathare community and is a human rights and social justice champion. Sure. Gasheke, karibu.
Asante sana, Reverend.
And we have with us Charity Muturi, a champion for human rights and also a champion for matters of suicide prevention and decriminalization of suicide. Karibuni sana.
Asante.
Okay, let's begin really where we should begin. How much suicide is happening? Is this something we should be worried about?
There's a systematic problem of suicide. There was a case that was done around Nyandarua where young people below 25 years had committed a suicide. In one village, you could find 3, 4. Here in Nairobi, in Mathare, where we come from, Mathare Social Justice Center, there's a lot of these cases now being reported. And this tells us that is a crisis that has not been given national attention. I'm happy Charity and members of his network have started speaking about decriminalization of the suicide because is a sickness that emanates because of the crisis we are facing economically. And it is in the heart of a family. And you know, the family come from our history of values of Christianity. It's come from that family where there's food, there's shelter, there's healthcare, there's love. And when that has been shattered, this crisis is when it is becoming very manifesting everywhere.
Charity, is this thing as serious as we are being told?
I believe it is. I think in the last few months, I have had a lot of conversations with people when they are responding to advocacy and they say, actually, I lost a brother 2 weeks ago, or I lost a cousin, or I lost, and the frequency of that is increasing. It is unfortunate that we do not have a national mental health survey. And so we are not able to give figures because of that. And one of the reasons is because of decriminalization, because then people are afraid to speak. And families also do not want to be stigmatized. So the reality is that it is a grave issue. We have very high numbers. However, they are not documented.
Okay. And what's preventing people from talking is the legal framework?
I think it's 3 things. I think one is cultural, because morally suicide is wrong. And so already there's the issue of someone does not want to sound or seem, or seem immoral. Then there's the religious issue. And Kenya is a very religious state. And so by virtue of being a sin, then people don't want to speak about it. And then now the legal complicates it even further, because then it confirms it's morally wrong, it's religiously wrong, and it is legally wrong.
Okay.
So those 3 covers mean that people will bribe if their people have been, have attempted suicide and have been taken to the police cell. The parents would rather bribe and get this person out quickly. So the numbers are grave, but unfortunately we don't have them. And one of the ways we want to get those numbers is to destigmatize and to decriminalize suicide attempt.
Now let's begin from the beginning, which is probably where we should have started. Tell us, beginning with you, Gasheke, how does this journey of suicide begin in any normal human being, young, middle-aged or old? Where does it start?
I was reading about the level of suicide in Kenya. So, but I looked generally, not in isolated cases, and how comes that very many people who their social condition are poor, and who maybe they are victims of abuses are committing suicide. So I was looking at that in a general way. And when I looked at the majority of the people who are committing suicide is those who their material conditions are poor, or those who are exposed in a traumatic condition, like the members of the KDF, the military officers who were exposed in Somalia in fighting, the police officer who always they are the one who are sent to, and you know we have a lot of accident. There's a police officer who go to collect victims of accident, victims of extrajudicial killings that happen that we document in Mathare. So you find these people, majority of them are the population that you will find committing suicide. So for me, I have not looked it in a clinical way, but I have looked it in a way to see how work this population. And I give you an example because also talking about mental health. There's a writer called Frantz Fanon, and he was a psychiatric. He was based in France somewhere. And many people who were coming to his clinic were black people. Then he was wondering why majority are the black people. And that's where my background come in of locating this crisis now we are facing in Kenya. So, and also learning from Charity and the work they have done of decriminalizing suicide. But I have not studied more specific cases, all learn about isolated cases that may be related to this phenomenon now we are facing in Kenya.
Now, Charity, tell us, where does this journey begin?
Number one, I think it begins at the grassroots. I feel that what Gasheke is doing is actually the expert work in being on the ground. Because it is true that the root causes of suicide and mental health challenges are all from a relational or financial problem. So poverty, unemployment, gender-based violence, toxic politics. Kenya has a very toxic political environment. And so every cycle of elections comes with trauma, even for us who've been affected by, what do you call it, displacement. And so it begins with those things. And the reality is that even if probably the cases of COVID have far reduced, the impact of COVID economically, relationally, in our homes, in our schools, in the cases of unemployment is real. When we have a KDF recruitment that has 7,000 youth showing up, it is to show that there is a problem. So that is where it starts. And usually if we don't address the cracks, then we start dealing with the issue of the deaths that we have.
Now tell me, you know, just an example.
Yes, yes.
I'm a teenager.
Yes.
I live in a leafy suburb.
Yes.
In a good address.
Yes.
There's money in the house.
Yes.
Every creature comfort that I might want. You know, there's a driver available.
Yes.
There's what? There's everything that you can ever want in life.
Yes.
But I still go ahead and commit suicide. For that person, where did the journey begin?
Okay. Now, before I comment, let me talk about the word committing suicide.
Yes.
And we are learning together.
Yes, sure.
Right.
Because our language can also criminalize. And so when we say someone is committing, we have already criminalized it. But we are learning together.
We
so
have
we say die by
them.
yes, die by suicide. I started having suicidal thoughts as a teenager at 12 years old. I was in a rich family. Or rather, at that time,
yes,
our family was wealthy. Yes,
comfortable.
yes. And what I would say is, you know, at that point you cannot probably call it poverty, but it is still financial and relational issues. My relationship with myself, my self-esteem being low. So with the absence of poverty, there's also the issue of self-identity and esteem and all these things. And so it is to say that we do have more suicides among the poor. That is true. But it cuts across because mental illness is a non-communicable disease and anyone is at risk. And people sometimes think that failure is the only reason for suicide, but even success can be. And money can frustrate you. You may find, this is what I wanted, I have it, but it has not fulfilled me in the way. Yes, it has not cured the problem that I have. So it's still a financial problem, it's just not poverty. And poverty, for those there's a book called When Helping Hearts by Steve Covey. And he says that there's poverty that's financial, poverty that's relational, poverty that is within different parts of our community. And I think we have a poverty of community in matters suicide. So as a community, we need to come together and accept that this is an issue that we have. It's an issue that we need to address. And we will address it by destigmatizing it culturally. So we need to stop these cultures that people have of, if it's denying burial rights for people who've died by suicide, or beating up dead bodies. We still have that in Kenya. Or stigmatizing the families that have been left behind. And as a result, when more suicides happen, we say, oh, you see, it was a curse. No, it is because you have stigmatized this family further, you have caused more trauma, and so there are more suicides in the family. So I think my call to action would be to say that every individual can help prevent suicide and can help prevent mental health conditions.
Okay, we're going to get to the mitigation.
Okay.
Gasheke, if I can ask you, because you work with the community, the Mathare community.
Yeah.
The only thing we know about the Mathare community, we know two things. We know it is a slum.
Yeah.
We also know there's a mental hospital.
Yeah.
And we tend to be very biased against it. What are you dealing with in terms of suicide in your community?
Yeah, first of all, but I like the question also about mental illness or cases of suicide in a suburb area. One thing that critical is that this show used to Crosstalk is the question of love and hope. The fact that you live around money does not mean there is hope and love. And she's really said very powerful about poverty and it. So I think as your question about Mathare is, first of all, there's a lot of substance abuse. Very many young people, because of poverty and hopelessness, they're exposed to drugs and crime. And this exposes their lives to become victims of mental illness. And the history of Mathare Hospital has been there since colonial times. I'm sure it is named after Mathare from Nyeris, but and even naming itself, it connotes something that is not humanizing, and that's also the problem. And Mathare Mental Hospital being there also and being closer to a slum, it tells how our society and our planning and the national thinking of how we organize society, how we think about people with mental illness. The way even in the market, how we treat them. And let's tell how even people who set our values as a society have dehumanized the people who are mentally ill. And I like it the way it comes from our culture, how we have socialized ourselves and stigmatized. So I think even when the Kenyan state or the Kenya way we have organized our institution, it tells us that, that we have not really thought about very well, even for our people who are marginalized and who are poor or who have sickness like mental health, and how we treat them. Okay. And that's very, very bad, because Mathare Mental Hospital, even where it is, even we are there, even yesterday, the walls is like a prison. In fact, I was thinking yesterday, for sure it's good you have asked, the walls is bordering somewhere we are doing an issue of ecological justice. And I was asking my fellow activists, why don't you even ask where we can do these wall images that inspire hope?
Okay. We're going to go into a break, and viewers, we're talking about a very critical subject now, We haven't heard a lot about it, and we've had our attitude against it. We're talking about suicide. We're taking a break. Please don't go away. It's very important that you hear this. We'll be right back.
Next week on She.
How was that journey, just trying to get to the point where you end up conceiving? How was that for you as the dad?
So we go to this doctor and he tells us, hey, right in front of my wife, tell us, hey, if you want to have children, you look for another wife. I kept telling Anima, I didn't marry you for children, I married you for companionship.
Yeah. Even if we go back to the Bible and you see how the dads were involved, God involved the dads before even conception. It's designed for us to be very much a part of the process, not just later on in life, but from the very beginning.
That's next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on She.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. We are talking about suicide and suicide mitigation, and how then can we prevent this problem. It's becoming a problem. It actually has already become a problem. What do we do? We now have a problem with suicide. What do we do? How do we mitigate?
First of all, I think I really support the effort that is being done by the task force led by Charity and other members of the stakeholder on issue of mental health and human rights, because it's very important, first of all, to decriminalize. But the second thing, this is not an individual issue. This is a societal problem. So also you cannot address it all by law. Is also to think about the economic crisis we are facing in this country and how it is affecting the young people. So this is the whole question for this country to start discussing, and especially the church. I think the church has done very great work historically in education, in healthcare, in saving our souls also. So the question now in this crisis of mental health and suicide, I think the church should start speaking about it, because it is affecting everybody. And it is a matter that touches our spirituality, our souls, our body, our economy, our youth. So we need to start speaking about it. And also, it is the question for social justice. As Madara Social Justice, also we advocate issue of social justice and say, you can have a society where you have a few rich people and a big percentage are poor people. And that's the major crisis that will expose many people to mental health issue and then lead to suicide.
Okay. Charity, what do we do?
I think I borrow a lot from my personal experience, because I started having suicidal thoughts at 14. But I couldn't talk about it because my father is a religious leader, and the families around us were religious. And then I got
You mean to say your father was a pastor?
He's a bishop.
He's a bishop, to be precise.
To be precise, yes.
Wow.
Yes, and so it is to
Okay.
say, for me, my journey was that I couldn't talk about it because it's a religious issue. And of course, again, it was a moral issue. And then later I learned it is a crime, and so I kept quiet even more. So when I was diagnosed with bipolar at 35, and I had symptoms enough to diagnose it even without suicide, I didn't tell my doctor. Because I felt the doctor is under the law and they might report me, and it took a whole 3 years. In the same way, it's a reflection of our community. We do not want to associate with things that are associated with sin. We do not want to associate with immoral things. And we also fear the law. So I would say that mitigation starts in the same way. We need to understand that suicide or suicidal tendencies are a symptom of a bigger problem. 90% of people who die by suicide, and this follows a psychological autopsy research, 90% of people who die by suicide have a mental health challenge. And so we should stop looking at this as a moral issue or a religious issue and deal with it as a health issue. My father has a heart condition. He has a right to emergency services. I have never seen someone saying that now, because you have hypertension, let's put handcuffs on you. So why is it that mental illness is an uncommunicable disease and I am cuffed because of emergencies? And so we need to look at it in terms of, one, destigmatizing it in the community, in our culture, destigmatizing it in the church, and that will need to come from our religious leaders. Kenya is a very religious country. As a patient of Mathare, majority of patients come for treatment 20 to 30 years after their first known symptoms. And when you ask them, where were you? They say, nilikuwa natolewa jin kwa msikiti, or nilikuwa kwa prophet wa madhabahu sugu, and so on. And so we need to address this in a wholesome way. Legal alone will not work. Religious alone will not work. Cultural alone will not work. We have to do it together. And that means we start to talk about these issues, because talking about it saves lives. So let's talk about it in our homes, in our schools, in our churches, in our cell groups, in our communities, in our hospitals, because we need to save lives. We cannot be losing lives because we are judging while God is the ultimate judge. I learned that from you, actually. You talked about it and said that we should leave matters of the afterlife to God. Yeah, because he alone has the right to judge us. But in terms of ensuring that as a Kenyan, I receive the highest attainable standards of health, according to our Constitution, Article 43, I need to receive treatment, even when it is emergency treatment after a suicide attempt. And Part B is emergency services. Also, the UN and WHO have called upon all countries to decriminalize suicide by 2030, because they've realized, even if it was there to decrease suicidal tendencies, countries that have decriminalized, have higher rates of suicide. I remember going to different hospitals. I remember going to different prisons and police to find these people so that we could work together. And the police were asking me, why don't you want data on completed? Completed, we have data and it's a lot. Why are you asking for attempted? Completed, we have data. So that's the, ni wale walibahatika, hatungewafunga. You understand? And so this is to say that mitigation starts with an attitude change. Changing from a moral, religious issue to a health issue to a human rights issue. I have a right to health services. Yes.
The church has been one of the institutions that has been blamed for stigmatizing.
Yes.
People who have attempted or either or have died by suicide, and especially those who are left behind. They're always looked at from a distance, kept away. What do you think the church can do to help this?
Maybe I learn from
charity. Charity work at the church do.
Yeah.
I would say, let me start with an example of, I went to speak in a theological college, and a pastor told me that there's a church he had, and his favorite member, his most active member died by suicide. But this church that had 8,000 branches countrywide did not allow pastors to enter a home touched by suicide. So even if it is to pray for the mother who has diabetes but the child died,
there are rules.
Not
the
allowed.
Rules of the church.
Yes. And so he was not allowed to bury or even to enter that compound. And he decided because of that to leave that church. And I think that's a good example to start with. Because he was able to see as a person, this is a rule within the church. But I feel it creates more harm than good. And we need more people like that who are bold enough to speak against.
So the church needs to revise its rules.
Yes. And one thing I like about the ACK church is that you have a specific liturgy for people who've died by suicide. And you're very clear on being, support systems before. So that's for people who attempt to have suicidal tendencies. During, and so that's during the burial. And you know very well, many churches don't conduct burial rites. And even after. I have a friend who lost her husband to suicide. He had depression. His was diagnosed and he was on treatment. And part of his social anxiety is that he couldn't go to crowds. So she talked to the pastor and she said, I'd like to request you to come and encourage my husband every week or even twice a month. I will facilitate you. The pastor said, no, those are demons, though, that is witchcraft. And finally, the man died by suicide. And then the same pastor, talked about, I'm coming to speak to you who have chosen not to go to hell like this person. That thing has affected the children deeply. So I think first, the intention, you know, usually the intention for something is good. Yeah, people have destigmatized it to discourage people. People have criminalized it to discourage people. But what we are saying is it's not working, and it is causing more harm. So what has been done, we cannot change. But from today, we can begin to set systems. And I'd like to call upon the National Council of Churches Kenya, the Interreligious Council, Hindu Council of Kenya, and all these bodies to speak as one. Because the other thing with churches, and one of the reasons why I started with advocacy in conservative churches, is people are like, hii imetoka redeemed, tutaichukua, hii imetoka full gospel, you know what I mean? And so, to clear that,
sectarianism, yeah.
Exactly. To avoid that, then we need our national bodies to speak.
Yes.
In one voice.
As one.
As
to have
one.
a common strategy.
Exactly.
All right.
Specifically on suicide prevention, spirituality and religion, and even to focus on the Bible. I mean, Saul died by suicide, and his mental health challenges did not start at that time. David used to play the harp for him in times of depression. Samson died by suicide and homicide. The whole building came down. And so this is not something that has started now. One thing that I always think about is Jesus is all-knowing. And so he knew that Judas would take his life. And he could have prevented it. But the consequences of a broken world are that we will experience pain, we will experience injustice, we will experience difficult times, and that includes suicide. So let's go back to the Bible. Let us speak that which restores. The word of God is about restoring, rejuvenating, rebuilding, So we need that in matters suicide.
Well, thank you. Gasheke, you want to say
That's
something?
so powerful. It's so great about the question of Jesus, and he knew about he was to be betrayed. So they say that there is a revolutionary or redemptive one, that you accept to carry the cross of the people, and you know really aware that the judgment is hanging. So that one, they say it's saying, and is saying in this Christian Family TV, that that one is like a revolutionary suicide. It's a redemptive. They're trying to say that there's this day that come when you accept that you are carrying the like people who fight for social justice and human rights. They know they'll be taken to court, to prison, but then in those circumstances, in case they lose their life, they know that they are paid a price. So I think what you have said about Christianity and the love of Jesus is that we start thinking about, are we speaking about these conditions that is making our people to feel vulnerable, to feel not loved, to feel not accepted, and also a bigger problem, societal problem of economy, of poverty. I think that as a church and as a reverend, I think that it should be in the heart of every gospel that we preach today.
Thank you, Gasheke. Thank you very much for coming. Charity, you want to say something?
Yes, please.
Okay.
One
Let
last
it be
thing.
brief. Yes.
Very brief.
Yes.
I wanted to say that we have begun looking at mental health as a very specialist issue, and that is not right. The World Health Organization did research on low and middle income countries, including Kenya. And they said our problem is not the lack of psychiatrists, but the lack of community gatekeepers to identify, intervene, and refer. And that is why I am saying Gasheke are the biggest specialists. It's supported by WHO, because the people dealing with, human rights issues, our community health workers, our pastors, our ushers in the church, our mothers in the homes, can be able to, when they know that mental health is knowing your ability, coping with stress, contributing to your community, and mental illness is irrational mood, irrational thought, irrational behavior. When these people are able to see these things and address them early, it will prevent suicide. So suicide is not a specialist issue. Everyone can help to prevent suicide. So let us look for ways to prevent and manage mental illness.
Thank you for this very, 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 very insightful topic and incisive topic. Viewers, we've been talking about suicide, and we want to begin to demystify this and to equip and tool you to be able to respond better to this emerging challenge that is around us. Act before it's too late. My name is Reverend Tom Otieno. This has been Crosstalk. Till next week, God bless you.